Hello everybody. Today I'm going to be showing a sort of a tutorial on how to do a watercolor background. The thing that I'm doing right now is just securing my watercolor paper to a cutting board. The reason I do this is twofold. One, it's easy to handle with still being flat, and when you use a heat gun on it, because it's on the cutting board, it will stay flat. So what this technique is just strips of watercolor, and the strip underneath it has some droplets running into the strip underneath it. So you actually work backwards. So you're going to start on the bottom and work down, and then you're going to actually turn it upside down so that it looks like it's dripping down. You have to put enough water on your paper, but not too much. Also, it's very important to dry in between every color so that the color that you're working with doesn't just flow into the color underneath, but it actually flows over it so that it makes those droplets. Overlapping the colors is very important, because right here where I'm using the blue, I didn't quite put it far enough into the purple, so there's that white space in between, and when you blow the color from the blue into the purple, it has this light blue where the white was in between the two colors. The little spritzer that I'm using is actually an air puffer by Tim Holtz. You put your marker in there and then just airbrush with it with your markers. It works really good for this technique and anything that you need to blow color for watercoloring. So the next color is going to be, I think, green. Yes. So I'm using Brusho for this, but you can use any kind of watercolor, any cakes, tubes, anything you want to use, as long as you make sure that the consistency is kind of runny but not super wet. As I'm going up in the colors, I'm actually using less water so that the splatters going into the color before isn't quite as big. It's just a fun technique to play with and just enjoy. So I've used, let's see, green, orange, yellow, and red. So I used about 6 colors to do this. All in all, this video from start to finish took me about 26 minutes to do the whole card. So it doesn't take a very long time. Once you start assembling or once you start working on this, it goes pretty fast. The most important thing is that you dry in between your layers. When you dry, make sure that you dry from above, not blowing the color back up into the yellow. So like that yellow that I'm doing right now, try and blow it down into the green so that it dries on the green instead of blowing it back into the yellow. It keeps your colors purer that way, and it also doesn't muddy it so that you don't get green flowing into your yellow, if that makes any sense. So oh yeah, I spilled a little bit of water on there, so I have like a nice old puddle on the green, which I will fix in a little bit. we're onto the orange color, and like I said, I'm using brushes for this, so you can vary the intensity of the colors that you're using. If you want them to be really light, just use a lot less, or if you want them really intense, just sprinkle on a little more color. On the red part that I'm going to be doing next, I did add brush out twice, just because I wanted to intensify the color a little bit. There you can see I just mopped up that green, so we're gonna try and fix it a little bit. Not very successfully, but you know, it's one of those things. Part of the design, I guess. Alright, so we're into the very last color, which is going to be our red. And like I said, I used a little extra red on this. It wasn't quite dark enough right above the orange there. It was kind of more like a peachy red, and I wanted a real red, so I just added some extra. And then I'm going to do the same thing, blow the color into the orange till you're satisfied with how many droplets, runs, whatever you want to call it, is in the orange color. And then once again, you're going to be drying it with the heat gun. Once you have this all done, we'll be removing the painter's tape. Now, I normally reuse my painter's tape, sometimes for watercolor. Mostly I stick it on a aerosol can, and then I just use it for holding down dies, or if I'm stenciling, holding down the corners. I hate just using it once and then throwing it away, so I try to recycle them. Alright, so here we are peeling up the yellow tape, and this painter's tape is actually really low tech. It sticks really good, but it doesn't tear your watercolor paper when you tear it off. I found that I think it was the blue painter's tape is too tacky. It doesn't come off your paper without actually tearing up a layer of your paper. Also, I always make my card fronts, the watercolor parts, always bigger than a regular card front, just so that I can trim it down to the size that I want, and then it doesn't really matter if you have that white border around it, because that's all going to be cut off. So I'm trimming that in the background, and then I'm going to be looking for a mat for the card, and I have a little plastic egg holder for a fridge, and I stick all my card front sized cardstock pieces in there. I have some 4x4, 4.5 by 3.5. I might even have some 3x3 pieces, and I just have them all together so that when I'm doing cards, I can just go through it really quick, grab some pieces that's already cut to the right size, and I don't have to cut into a whole 8.5 by 11 or 12 by 12. So I also pulled out a piece of vellum, so I'm going to be gluing the watercolor piece to the black mat, and I do like to burnish it really good when I use my wet glue. My card front is gonna be slightly bigger, so when you add your card front and it doesn't quite fit, make sure that you put it exactly on the fold line so that whatever's sticking out you can just trim away with your scissors so it fits perfectly. Nobody will know that you actually cut away some parts. Alright, just burnishing it back on there again, making sure it sticks really good, and then we'll trim it so that there's no yucky white. Alright, and now I am going to look for a circle die so that I can die cut the vellum, and just testing the size to see if that's what I want. I'm going to use my Cuttlebug because it's right next to my desk on a little cart. It's super easy to get a hold of. It's not very heavy and it's got such a small footprint. I find that I use this a lot more than my Big Shot, which is probably just as far away on the floor next to me, but it's just so much heavier. So I use my Cuttlebug a lot more. And I also have a little, I think it's called a Sidekick. It's made by Allison Design, and it's the same size as the Tim Holtz one that just came out. It doesn't take up a lot of space, and it's for those little dies that you use a lot. It's just easy to run them through there really quick because, once again, such a small footprint. Goes on your desk easy, puts away easy. So that is another tool that I reach for all the time. Alright, so back to card making. I glued the vellum part to my watercolor paper, and I just use Eileen's tacky glue. I've used Eileen's Turbo Tacky. I just add a little bit of water to it so that it's a little more runny, and I use it right out of the bottle. I seem to kind of always reach for that. Alright, so I'm using some Concord and 9th stamp and die sets. So I'm going to be stamping You're So, and then I'll die cut the kind out of some cardstock. I'll let you guys enjoy this for a minute. I'll come back once I have the kind cut out of my paper and my foam. Alright, so I had quite a fun time trying to add the foam word and the die cut stamped kind together. So I stamped in black VersaFine ink on the vellum, and I'm just adding the die cut word on top of that, and that's pretty much the card. I hope you like this, and if you like the video, please thumbs up. Thank you.